The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
What does Evan Williams think the Packers need to take the next step?
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast.
So we're here a year past when you had the opportunity to get drafted, and now we're in Green Bay, site of the draft. There's going to be a whole new group of players that now are going to look at you the same way you looked at the guys on the team last year. Have you had time to think about what that difference is going to be like for you?
Not really, honestly. I've honestly been more just excited that I'm not the one going through this kind of nerve-wracking time. This time last year, it was just, it's a lot of emotions, a lot of stuff building up for some, a complete decision that's out of your hands. And so, it's a little nerve-wracking, the whole process of, Combine, Pro Day, going from event to event. But I'm excited for kind of just that dynamic, getting able to be the guy that people can look to, once they first come into the building to, establish that first connection. And I'm excited to see, where we go in this draft.
The last time we talked, you mentioned wanting to add as a leader. We heard from Tucker Kraft that he wants to do that. We've heard from Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur that they want Jordan Love to do that. Why do you think that's the place that this team is right now? Youngest team in the league. That would be the obvious answer, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think some leadership would bring to the Packers?
Yeah, I feel like it would just bring a sense of stability, a sense that you have just a group of people that you can rely on when you face adversity in games. It's kind of just about having a strong dynamic and building that foundation from the ground up. And yeah, you need a couple of guys to step up to be able to do that. And so, I feel like, coaches are just, looking forward to somebody. I'm trying to, everybody tries and does their little parts, but just for a couple people to be the guy that people can look at when, you run into adversity. And I feel like our team is, taking strides in that department specifically.
There was adversity in these big games, the NFC North games. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people on Twitter about the record in the NFC North and all that stuff, and then the playoff game. How do you find that gear that you need in those big games when you're trying to be an NFC contender?
Yeah, a lot of it is just about staying the course. That's something we said a lot last year, just because in this business, adversity is really guaranteed. Like, you're going to run into some good opponents. We had a stacked division last year, and you're going to have those games where, you're in a hostile environment and whatever, the weather's not favorable or whatever. And so you just have to be a group that's resilient enough, kind of has built a callus throughout this offseason and, now going into the season, you're resilient enough to where you're not fazed by, those type of situations. As a matter of fact, you embrace it, when you step into those situations. So, and that starts right now, where we're getting back into workouts and stuff. And, it's just kind of building that togetherness. And, hopefully when the going gets tough, we'll be a little more connected.
How do you hope the vibes, the culture changes as you move into 2025, understanding the season didn't end the way you wanted it? Staying the course is one thing, in terms of wanting to be consistent, right? You don't want to panic, you don't want to get out of yourself. But the course last year was not good enough. I remember BJ Raji, once upon a time, talking about, there was this Winston Churchill quote about sometimes your best isn't good enough. You need to be better than that to win. How do you affect that change? How do you find that difference? How do you hope that you're able to grow and evolve as a team?
Yeah, I think first, whenever I'm faced with a challenge like that, I look to myself, right? You look what you can, do personally to get yourself in the best shape you can, get yourself just in the best position to, be able to have some sort of influence on the team. And then, you just try to try to have a little bit of impact on the guy next to you. I feel like that's where it starts in everybody, really. First, taking accountability with yourself, your own actions, your own habits, and then seeing if you could, rub that off to the guy next to you. And then, hopefully by the time it comes to the season, we're a connected enough group to where, we feel like nothing can really stop us. And so, yeah, I'm a guy that, definitely looks inwards initially, but I feel like I can definitely improve on that, being able to just vocalize, a little more, during especially these periods when you have people coming into the building, and just try to make us as connected a group as we can.
What would you, there's going to be a new set of Packers coming in. What would you want to have heard now that you've been in the league for a year? What would you have wanted to hear when you came in that now you can say to these young guys?
Oh, man.
And maybe you don't really know the answer for another couple of years.
It could be the case. I'm young still. I think I'm young for this organization, but
youngest team in the league. Like, you're a veteran now.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I'm a vet, I guess. But I would say it's just, I wish somebody told me that, everything's going to end up all right. It's definitely a period in your life where you have a lot of rapid changes, right? You're so unsure of, okay, I don't even know what city I'm going to go to for the next 3-4 years, and there's going to be a whole set of coaches and people I need to, gain their respect. And so, at least for me, I was just very, caught up in all those thoughts, really just nervous, uptight for that moment. I wish somebody told me just to live in it and just like let your character lead you, through this path. Because, at times like that, or especially for me, I was, doubtful if you're good enough to you're going to have those periods of self-doubt, especially, during these periods. But yeah, I would just say to, trust your preparation, trust everything you've gone through.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But just to understand that, that's led them to the point that they're at now, hoping for their name to be called. That's a pretty special place in itself. And, just let them know that work will carry them to where they need to go.
What do you think you would want? So, okay, this new group of guys is going to come in. What do you want to be able to say about the Packers in 2025 when you say, hey, this year we're about this, and when you come in, you got to be about this if you want to contribute to winning?
Yeah, I would just say you need to be tough first and foremost, both physically and mentally. I feel like we're an organization just historically in the past that has proven that, that we're going to be a physical group. We're going to, hit you in the mouth, and it's up to you to make the next move. But, that's what we're about. And so, that's really something each year you look back and hope that you put a physical brand of ball on tape. But no, I feel like just with everybody getting, or I can speak for the defense, but with everybody getting more comfortable, another year with this coaching staff, we're not starting from ground zero, which is where we were last year. I feel like we're going to play a real physical brand of ball and, just be a team that, is really tough.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll win $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. FanDuel makes it easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. There's so many ways to bet on your game, your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can also check out some odds on the NFL draft. The over-under for running backs drafted in the first round, 2.5. Odds on the over, plus 110. The under, minus 152. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
We finally made it to draft day, and the rumors are swirling.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast.
The trade-up buzz for the Bears had been sort of simmering for a little while. I was like, could this be a team that trades up for, say, Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, that maybe, to the Jacksonville Jaguars pick at number 5, or the Las Vegas Raiders pick at number 6 to make sure that the Bears land the top playmaking running back in this draft class. But as we got closer to draft day, those trade murmurings took a I was going to say a hard right turn, but really more stepped on the gas, because now it's not about trading up to 5 or 6 for Ashton Genty, but it's about trading up as high as number 3 to the New York Giants for Penn State pass rusher Abdul Carter. Now, I always try and be careful when it comes to draft rumors, especially on Twitter, because there are a lot of people out there that purport to be insiders, but they really don't have any sources. But it's easy to make up a report and use some really careful language so that you're not pinning yourself down, so you can never be proven wrong by wording it in just the right way and always throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and saying what sticks. There's a lot of fake Bears insiders out there. But this report came from a reporter for the New York Daily News, not somebody who covers the Bears, but somebody who covers the New York Giants. Pat Leonard tweeted that Chicago Bears are looking to move up, and he also noted that multiple teams ahead of the Bears are open to moving back. But we've heard from Leonard and others that Chicago has had conversations with the New York Giants specifically about potentially trying to get to 3 to take Abdul Carter. I don't know that we've had specific reports of any conversations with the Patriots at 4, but that seems to be like the range the Bears are looking at here, where if Cam Ward goes number 1 to the Titans, as everyone fully knows at this point, and then presumably Travis Hunter goes number 2 to the Cleveland Browns, that would leave the Giants likely to take Penn State's Abdul Carter number 3, unless they go quarterback there, or unless the Browns go quarterback at number 2. If somebody like Shedeur Sanders goes top 3, then maybe Travis Hunter could then go 3, Carter could make it to 4, and that could change a little bit of the Bears' potential trade-up math. But clearly, this would be a bombshell type of trade, a blockbuster trade to move from 10 into the top 4 of this draft. It would shake up the entire draft for everyone else, and it would require a huge, significant investment from the Bears to go up that high. Everyone likes to just take the draft trade chart and do the math on, okay, well, the 3rd pick is worth this many points, and the 10th pick is worth this many points, and so if you just add enough points from another pick, you can get up there. But when you're trading in the top 5, the math on that changes a little bit, and teams don't tend to follow that board very tightly when it comes to moving from the top 5 down outside, to 10, right? Those bigger moves have a more premium type of investment. So for me, we haven't heard anything specific about what compensation would have to look like. But if you look back at trends for recent blockbuster trades into the top 3, at a bare minimum, it would cost the Bears 2026 first round pick. Like, you would have to give up 10 and next year's first to get up to 3 to the New York Giants. You may have to throw in more than that. And that adds, I know if you do the draft trade chart, was that more than what the chart says? Yes, because that's what it costs to get into the top 3 of the NFL draft when you're going all the way from 10. If you're going from 3 to 5, those are a little bit more reasonable. You don't have to overspend and move a couple spots within the top 5, but to go from 10 to 3 is going to cost at least next year's first and probably another pick from this year's draft. Maybe it's a first and a third this year and then next year's first. Would not surprise me if that's the kind of price the New York Giants are demanding for that spot, because the Giants would be perfectly happy staying there and taking Abdul Carter. It's not as though the Giants are eager to move down and they don't want any of these players, so they're happy to move down because they don't really want to be at 3 anyway. This is a Giants team that wants to be there and wants to take that player there. So you have to give them an offer that blows them away so that they would be willing to pass on that player and wouldn't take that player and would go back to 10, where the Bears don't even want to be. So why do the Giants want to be at 10 unless you really give them a super great offer? So I don't know that Ryan Poles is actually going to be willing to spend what it takes to get to 3. I think Ryan Poles is looking at this saying, hey, if I can find a good deal to move up into the top 5 and get a top 5 caliber player, I will do that if I can indeed get good value. Like, if teams are eager to move down, which I don't think the Giants are, but maybe the Patriots at 4 or the Jaguars at 5 could be more willing to move down. But the Giants having a chance at one of the true blue chip players in this draft, whether it's Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter there, like, that's going to be hard to pry them out of that spot. And so I don't expect the Bears ultimately make this level of a huge blockbuster trade up to number 3 for Abdul Carter. But you can certainly understand why they would want to. I mean, Abdul Carter is far and away the best pass rusher in this draft class, and one of these players who might be one of the best pass rushers of the last few draft class. Because you think about, like, last year there wasn't that truly elite edge rusher. I think the first guy off the board was Leatu Latu, and then Dallas Turner went pretty quickly after that, and Jared Verse. Those guys were mid-first round picks. And so, I think somebody like Abdul Carter is more in the Will Anderson top of the draft conversation, or like Aiden Hutchinson, 2 years or 3 years ago now. Like, he's in that caliber of pass rusher here. You can see Ryan Poles saying, hey, this is probably the biggest need lingering on the Bears roster, is like one more pass rusher to mix into this defensive line. There's clearly one guy who's better than the rest. If you could trade up at a reasonable price, because it's a buyer's market, I think it's worth making those calls. But I think there's a reason the reporting has been the Giants have been telling the Bears no, is because Ryan Poles is not going to overspend on draft trade just to get Abdul Carter, but wanted to at least see and find out if that's something that could be done. I still think a trade up for somebody like Mason Graham from Michigan isn't out of the question either, because it'd be cheaper to get up to 5, 6, or 7 for Mason Graham than it is to get to like 3 or 4 for Abdul Carter. And I don't think the Bears are going to trade up for Ashton Jeanty specifically, in part because I think Genty's going to end up going 5 to the Jaguars, or maybe 6 to the Raiders in that area there. So that's where I think I believe there is truth and validity to the idea that the Bears have called about moving up in the top 3 for Abdul Carter. Like, I don't think it's a fake rumor, but I also don't think it's likely to actually happen on game day or on draft day. I think what's more likely is that they end up either staying at 10 or moving down from 10 and taking someone like Texas offensive tackle Calvin Banks, who's also been a very hot rumor for the Bears.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The 2025 NFL Draft starts tonight, and what does the latest insider buzz say may unfold?
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast.
I don't want to say the hay's in the barn, right? But like, the lifting's done. And now it's just, what do the people that have the connections at the big insider spots, like, what do they have to say? How is it trending? What's real? What's not? And there's some really fascinating stuff that's unfolding through a lot of the big mock draft projections from names like Albert Breer from SI, The Athletic. Mine last night had this as well. I'd heard some of the same things, and I'm not going to put myself in the boat of insiders as Albert Breer and Dane Brugler. Dane's the GOAT as far as I'm concerned of guys from my generation doing draft stuff. And I got a great deal of admiration for the work that he does, but I've been in the space long enough that, like, I know some people, right? And that's the blessing that I feel like I have with doing the stuff I do with NFL draft coverage. So what's happening this morning? What is the expectations that are shifting? The big one that started yesterday, and it just got more and more and more and more prevalent throughout the course of the last probably 18 hours. Kelvin Banks trending like he's going to be a top 6 pick. And maybe it's a smokescreen, but I heard coming into the week, Kelvin Banks is going to go earlier than you think. Of course, the Dolphins tied to Kelvin Banks. He was often mocked there, and it became the widely popular fit and pairing to put with the Dolphins and say the floor is at 13. Well, now, like, between Vic Tafur of The Athletic and some of the NFL Network mock drafts and Joe Marino had it with Locked On NFL Scouting and the names that I mentioned earlier. Kelvin Banks is going 6 to the Raiders. And some of this might be, and these are the mock drafts. I'm not saying that that is unequivocally going to be the pick, but that is where the momentum is for this pick to happen. Is it buzz for the Jags to try to get somebody to trade up to 5 and get in front of the, like, I don't know. That's the fun part about it. But if that does indeed hold, what that ends up happening is the domino effect of, okay, well, Armand Membu was going to be the pick at 6 if the Jags or the Bears were taking Genty at 5. And now where does Membu go? Does Membu push the Jets off of a tight end? And then if that happens, where do the tight ends happen? And we're going to talk about with the trade-up teams in just a little bit on the show, the tight end domino might be one that benefits the Dolphins directly with some of what they are trying to achieve, depending on who's on the board. So Kelvin Banks, you heard coming in, he's going to go earlier than you think. And now every predictive mock draft from every well-plugged-in insider in the last 18 hours has Kelvin Banks going 6 to the Raiders. Now, that domino effect for the Dolphins obviously is what do the Saints do at 9? They have an offensive line need. They declined the 5th-year option on Trevor Penning. Is this shift to Banks for the Raiders more about Colton Miller? Does that make Colton Miller available in the backdrop of all of these offensive tackles? And what does that do for the tackle market? And how could that trickle down to Miami? You know, that impacts the 49ers with their pick at 11, where they've got Trent Williams, who's one of the best offensive linemen in the game, but he's like 37 years old. So there's teams in between 6 and 13 where, you know, if the domino effect is, and I know some mocks had Membu not going until 13. I believe Todd McShay had the Dolphins taking Membu in his mock. Now, I would be surprised. My expectation is the Jets would then pivot and just take Armand Membu at 7 because they took Olu Fashanu last year at right tackle. And now you have Membu potentially to lock in as, or Fashanu at left tackle, and then potentially Membu to just pair with them and automatically with Justin Fields in the run game and physical guys that are prototypes. Makes a lot of sense. But then if the Bears don't come up and the Jaguars take Genty, and what you then have is the Bears potentially taking Tyler Warren. And then, you know, who's the other tight end team? Is it the Colts? Is it somebody else in that stratosphere? And if it's the Colts, for Miami's purposes, who makes it? Does Mason Graham slide? If Mason Graham doesn't slide, then, you know, are they entertaining trade back options? I know for a fact that's something the Dolphins are really aspiring to achieve, is to add even more draft capital to their pool of talent this year, whether that comes via Jalen Ramsey or number 10 or a trade back from 13, like however that looks, I know that's a prerogative and that's something that is aspiring because of where the team is at and the nature of this offseason is kind of like a foundational year for the next cycle with this nucleus of talent. And of course, there's a long-term risk that's associated there, because what happens if those who are in charge don't remain in charge? But everything that they have done has indicated that, you know, more draft capital is a piece that is going to be important, because they are looking to add the young players to the mix. And it's a great year to have a bunch of picks where the Dolphins don't have a bunch of picks. So there's 3 teams that have been hotly rumored the last 18 hours or so to be teams looking to move up in the 2025 NFL draft. Teams in the 20s even. And Miami could potentially be in play for all 3. There are 3 teams in the 20s that have been reported this week to be the teams that are kind of sniffing around the opportunity to come up in the draft order. And that's an important part of the question, because it's very easy for us to say, well, Kelvin Banks is gone, domino effect, somebody might get pushed down, trade back. You're going to have even more players you like on the board, right? But it's not just as simple as trade back, because you need to know who's trying to come up. The first team is Denver at 20. And I kind of get the impression that they like this running back class. I think the nature in which Denver comes up probably is not a overly realistic scenario for the Dolphins, where they would probably be looking to come up for Ashton Genty. But Genty is being flirted with potentially going at 5 with Jacksonville or trading with Chicago, with the Bears coming up from 10. But if he doesn't go at 5 and Chicago stays at 10, like that's kind of the expected chalk pick there if he makes it to the Bears at 10. If he gets past that point, you got San Francisco and Dallas before Miami. Pretty long shot for Genty. But if the Broncos have eyes on other players, if the Broncos have eyes on Colston Loveland, that's going to be a name that's very common to invoke in this section of the show, because I think there's another team that's been reported to not only be interested in Colston Loveland, but interested potentially moving up and showed they were willing to have those conversations last year with a different tight end. But if the Broncos, if they're looking for Sean Payton's joker and they've done a really good smoke screen with running backs and they have everybody believing that they're in backs, but they're really in like a long-term piece and they don't want to pay Evan Ingram long-term, who's there on a 1-year deal that he signed this year, Colston Loveland could be an option for Miami to go back to 13. And from a trade value chart perspective, you're probably looking at getting 51 back, but have to send an early day 3 back as a part of the package. Okay, I love the idea of getting 48 and 51 and going back from 13 to 20 and avoiding having to slide back too far in the queue. But you're not adding any extra picks, right? And that's part of the puzzle but I do think you have more picks in the right range of the draft. Likelihood there, I would say, is pretty low, but it is an acknowledgement to make that if Broncos have intentions on a flex receiver who could play tight end, big body player instead of running backs as they've kind of postured or tried not to posture, that could be in play because of the domino effect of if Kelvin Banks goes 6, let's say Ashton Genty goes 5, Kelvin Banks goes 6, and then the Jets pivot to Armand Membu at 7. Where's Tyler Warren go? Like you might see a world in that situation where Tyler Warren and and Colston Loveland are both on the board when Miami picks at 13. And now you're really putting the feet to the fire to any team that's looking for a flex weapon to come up. That's also the case with the Rams. And I think this is a team, and obviously there's been history with these two teams in doing deals, and so much so that Les Snead and Sean McVay said earlier this week they've had conversations with the Dolphins about Jalen Ramsey. So that's where this one gets interesting for me. The Rams last year tried to come up and get Brock Bowers. They didn't have the ammo to get it done. But they really wanted that mismatched tight end receiving weapon, right? And now the Rams have moved on from Cooper Kupp. Colston Loveland is a blur the lines between a tight end and wide receiver and physical and the things that he can do and how he can help you in the run game and how they use their tight ends as guys on the edge. Makes a lot of sense. And it's been reported that they are interested in potentially going up and getting Colston Loveland as a potential trade-up candidate team. So you should be rooting for the scenarios that put Loveland and potentially Tyler Warren, because Indy at 14 is such a popular tight end spot in mocks. You should be hoping both those guys get on the board. Or maybe you're just hoping to see Colston Loveland there, and then there's the urgency of, hey, you're going to run out. This is it. This is the last call. Because if that's the case, the Rams, who pick at 26, have a pick that's valued about 450 less points on the trade value chart than what the Dolphins pick at 13 is. And what if Jalen Ramsey hypothetically becomes a piece of this package, right? Like, and this is all hypothetical, and I'm as tired of talking about hypotheticals as you guys are of listening to hypotheticals, right? But that's the nature of this time of year. And then tonight, after the pick is made in the first round wraps, we're going to talk about the Dolphins pick at 13 or wherever they pick. And if they make a trade, we'll probably do 2 separate shows, one on the trade, one on the player, and talk about everything that unfolds, and we'll have tangible things to talk about, right? But what if Jalen Ramsey's a piece of this puzzle back and the Rams come up and they say, hey, we're going to lose out on some day 2 draft capital, but we're getting Jalen Ramsey back as a part of the deal to go up to 13. If it's Ramsey and 13, This is the hard pill to swallow with where the Rams are at, though. They don't have a 2. They do not have a second-round pick. They do have 2 3s. They have 90 and 101. If you took 90, 101, and 26, you're still about 250 points or so on the trade value chart away from being equal to what the Dolphins pick at just 13 is before you include Jalen Ramsey in the package. That's equal to the 68th pick in an NFL draft, so an early 3. But usually, if you trade for future picks, those picks are devalued because you can't cash in right now. So the last thing I'll say about the Rams is this. Would you take 26, a 2026 2, 90 and 101 for 13 and Jalen Ramsey if the team is intent on moving Jalen Ramsey and Jalen Ramsey doesn't want to be here?